The world changes. We do not.
When Interview with the Vampire first appeared in 1976, readers met a new kind of vampire in not a cloaked monster in a castle, but a voice filled with longing, regret, and a hunger for more than blood. Anne Rice had taken her grief and imagination and poured them into a novel that would forever change Gothic horror. Vampires were suddenly complex, philosophical, and painfully human. But nearly 2 decades later, this world of velvet and shadows was reborn on the big screen. In 1994, director Neil Jordan brought Louis, Lestat, and Claudia to life in one of the most ambitious Gothic films ever made. Starring Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and a young Kirsten Dunst, the production was as strange and difficult as the story itself. 6 months of night shoots, elaborate prosthetics, and behind-the-scenes struggles that almost broke the cast. Together, the book and the film created a cultural phenomenon. From the French Quarter of New Orleans to the candlelit sets of Pinewood Studios, Interview with the Vampire became more than fiction. It became a modern mythology, shaping how we see vampires in everything from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to Twilight. Here are 20 strange and true facts about Interview with the Vampire, beginning with a story that sat unfinished for years, and ending with a film that made audiences see immortality in an entirely new light. Fact 1. The Origins, a 30-page short story. Before the film, Interview with the Vampire was just a short story, about 30 pages long. Anne Rice did not tell the story from the vampire's perspective, but from that of the interviewer. The story sat unfinished for years, waiting for the right catalyst. This early attempt already showed Rice's ambition. She wanted to shift the focus from folklore monsters to inner lives. But at the time, she was a young writer struggling with her craft, not yet ready to expand it into a novel. Fact 2. Tragedy became the spark. The turning point came in 1972, when Rice's daughter, Michelle, died at age 5 from leukemia. Devastated, Rice returned to the abandoned short story the following year. Writing became her outlet for grief. Michelle became the inspiration for Claudia, the eternally young vampire girl. Claudia embodies the grief of a mother who has lost her child, cursed to remain forever frozen in time. Kirsten Dunst, who played Claudia in the film, delivers the iconic line, "I want some more." That hunger for life, love, and eternity echoes Rice's own yearning for her daughter. Fact 3. A 5-week writing frenzy. In 1973, Rice locked herself into a writing marathon. She wrote the first draft of Interview with the Vampire in just about 5 weeks. Most of the writing happened at night, while her days were spent immersed in research on vampire lore and Gothic literature. The intensity consumed her. After finishing the novel, Rice developed obsessive-compulsive behaviors, which required therapy. The act of writing had opened a door to her grief, and it was both healing and destabilizing. What Rice couldn't have imagined at the time was that this late-night burst of writing would eventually lead to one of Hollywood's most elaborate Gothic films. The story she crafted in solitude in 1973 would, 2 decades later, become the foundation for a production that demanded its own kind of endurance from actors and crew. Fact 4. River Phoenix was originally cast as the interviewer. Originally, the role of Daniel Malloy, the journalist who interviews Louis, was given to River Phoenix. Tragically, Phoenix died of a drug overdose in 1993, just weeks before filming began. Christian Slater stepped in at the last minute, donating his entire salary from the film to Phoenix's favorite charities as a tribute. The tragedy added a real-life shadow to a story already steeped in death and loss. Fact 5. A 6-month shoot buried in darkness. The 1994 film was shot over an unusually long and grueling 6-month production, primarily at night and mostly in London during winter. The constant darkness on set mirrored the story's mood and had a real psychological impact. Brad Pitt later described the experience as 6 months of effing darkness and admitted he was miserable during filming. Director Neil Jordan attributed both the tone of the film and Pitt's emotional state to the nocturnal schedule, noting the heavy burden of playing a character consumed by guilt and isolation. Fact 6. Tom Cruise immersed himself in Lestat. Tom Cruise threw himself completely into playing Lestat in the 1994 film. He spent hours each day in makeup and wigs, rehearsed extensively in full costume, and even studied vampire folklore to embody the character's elegance and menace. Crew members recalled how Cruise stayed in character between takes, testing movements and mannerisms until Lestat felt alive on screen. The dedication paid off. Critics praised his performance, with some calling it one of the boldest and most surprising roles of his career. For Cruise, it was a chance to break away from his action hero image and prove he could disappear into a dark, gothic role. Fact 7. Vampires reimagined as philosophical beings. Before Anne Rice, vampires were mainly portrayed as villains, monsters with no depth, no conscience, no philosophy. With Interview with the Vampire, Rice gave them humanity, conscience, and desire. Lestat crystallizes this transformation when he says, "Evil is a point of view. God kills indiscriminately, and so shall we." Her vampires were not soulless, they were conflicted, emotional, and endlessly reflective. Fact 8. Existential themes redefine the genre. The novel is steeped in existential questions. Can an immortal being find purpose? Does mortality exist without God? Louis is constantly tormented by these thoughts. He reflects, "The world changes, we do not." This philosophical core made Rice's vampires appealing to readers who wanted more than gothic tropes. They wanted to wrestle with questions of existence, and Rice gave them that, cloaked in blood and velvet. The 1994 film carried these same themes to the screen. Brad Pitt's performance as Louis captured the exhaustion of immortality, a man haunted not just by bloodlust, but by guilt and endless questioning. Director Neil Jordan leaned into this tension with long silences, candlelit confessions, and intimate close-ups that made audiences feel Louis' despair as though it were their own. It was proof that the existential weight of the novel could survive translation from page to screen. Fact 9. The cast wore special contact lenses and hung upside down. To make the vampires look otherworldly, the cast underwent unusual preparation. Before filming many scenes, actors were asked to hang upside down for up to 30 minutes so blood vessels would swell in their faces, creating a more eerie, undead look. In addition, Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt, and others wore specially designed contact lenses to give their eyes a glowing, predatory quality under candlelight and dim sets. The combination of practical effects and makeup created some of the most convincing vampire visuals of the era, long before CGI became common. Fact 10. The birth of the Vampire Chronicles. The success of Interview with the Vampire convinced Rice to continue the story. Over the next 4 decades, she expanded the universe into the Vampire Chronicles, comprising more than a dozen books. They sold over 150 million copies, making Rice one of the most successful Gothic writers of all time. Her vampires rival Dracula in cultural influence, but unlike Stoker's creation, Rice's immortals were seductive, tragic, and deeply human. Fact 11. The perspective shift changed everything. The original short story Rice wrote in 1968 was told entirely from the interviewer's point of view. But when she expanded it into a novel, she flipped the perspective to Louis, giving readers a vampire's inner monologue for the first time. This shift made the novel revolutionary. By putting us inside Louis' tortured consciousness, Rice transformed vampires from monsters into tragic anti-heroes. His confession begins, "So you want me to tell you the story of my life? I'll tell you my story. I'll tell you all of it." Fact 12. Writing triggered obsessive-compulsive behaviors. After finishing the manuscript, Rice struggled with obsessive-compulsive rituals and sought therapy. The process of immersing herself so deeply in death, grief, and immortality had taken a toll on her psyche. It highlights how personal the novel was, not just an artistic work, but a raw, emotional exorcism that left Rice changed. Fact 13. Brad Pitt tried to quit mid-filming. While filming in London, Brad Pitt became increasingly miserable with the production. He later revealed he was trapped in months of cold, dark night shoots and hated the heavy makeup and costumes. At one point, Pitt even called his friend and agent to see how much it would cost to break his contract. The answer? $40 million. Realizing he was stuck, Pitt pushed through and finished the film. Despite his misery, his performance as Louis's tormented soul remains one of the most memorable aspects of the movie. Fact 14. A haunted plantation stood in for Louis's home. Louis's grand New Orleans estate in Interview with the Vampire wasn't just a lavish set, it was filmed at a real plantation mansion near New Orleans. The location, with its sweeping verandas and Gothic architecture, gave the film an authentic Southern Gothic atmosphere that couldn't have been recreated on a soundstage. But here's where it gets eerie. The plantation has long been rumored to be haunted. Locals and visitors have reported strange noises, ghostly figures, and unexplained cold spots throughout the property. Cast and crew members even admitted that the atmosphere on set felt unsettling, especially during late-night shoots. That layer of real-life spookiness added to the already brooding tone of the film. In a story obsessed with death and immortality, using a mansion with its own haunted history made Louis's world feel all the more chilling and believable. Fact 15. Filming on the Mississippi River nearly went wrong. One of the most challenging scenes to shoot was set on the Mississippi River, where Louis contemplates his transformation. Production brought in large rigs and boats to capture the eerie atmosphere at night. The crew battled cold conditions, thick fog, and unstable currents that made filming dangerous. At one point, rising water levels threatened the equipment, forcing delays and safety concerns. Despite the chaos, the river sequence became one of the most atmospheric in the film, grounding the supernatural story in a very real, physical setting. Fact 16. Claudia's breakout performance. Kirsten Dunst was just 11 years old when she played Claudia. Her chilling performance earned her critical acclaim and made her one of Hollywood's youngest breakout stars. She embodied the tragedy of being locked forever in a body that will never grow up. Fact 17. A story that keeps adapting. Rice's world hasn't stayed confined to one book or one film. Interview with the Vampire has been adapted into comics, manga, and most recently a television series launched in 2022. Each retelling brings new layers while staying true to Rice's original vision, a vampire story of love, grief, and eternity. Fact 18. Filming in New Orleans and London. The 1994 film was shot on location in New Orleans, Anne Rice's hometown, and in London to capture the Gothic atmosphere of both the American South and Europe. The New Orleans locations included the French Quarter and Lafayette Cemetery No. 1, grounding the film in the city that inspired Rice's novels. Anne Rice had always envisioned New Orleans as inseparable from her vampire mythology, so filming there gave authenticity to Louis and Lestat's story. Combined with the elaborate sets built in Pinewood Studios in England, the production created a richly detailed, atmospheric world that mirrored the novel's lush descriptions. Fact 19. Resonance with the queer community. Rice's vampires live outside society, navigating forbidden love, eternal loneliness, and chosen families. Her work became deeply meaningful to queer readers who saw themselves in these outsiders. The unspoken homoerotic tension between Louis and Lestat was groundbreaking in 1976. Today, it's recognized as a vital part of why her work endures. Fact 20. A box office and cultural success. When Interview with the Vampire premiered in November 1994, it was a major event. Despite controversy over casting Tom Cruise as Lestat, the film opened at number 1 at the U.S. box office, earning $36 million in its first 2 weeks. Globally, it grossed over $220 million on a budget of around $60 million, making it one of the most successful Gothic horror films of the decade. It was nominated for 2 Academy Awards, Best Art Direction and Best Original Score, and won a BAFTA for cinematography. Beyond numbers, the film introduced a new generation to Anne Rice's world and cemented the image of the vampire as brooding, sensual, and tragic on the big screen. As Lestat memorably declares, "I am the vampire Lestat. I am immortal, more powerful than any human fantasy, and I shall give you the choice I never had." Before we wrap up, there are still a few strange details worth sharing. Little pieces of behind-the-scenes history that make Interview with the Vampire even more unforgettable. Consider these the hidden gems for true fans. Bonus 1. The Coffin Challenge. For realism, the actors filmed scenes lying inside coffins, and it wasn't easy. Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, and Kirsten Dunst all had to spend long stretches sealed in velvet-lined boxes under hot lights while cameras rolled. The claustrophobic conditions left several of them shaken, but the shots became some of the most haunting images in the film. It was a strange test of endurance that added a chilling authenticity to the final product. Bonus 2. A Night Owl's Process. Rice did most of her writing at night, often until dawn. She researched vampire legends by day and wrote compulsively by night. This nocturnal rhythm mirrored her characters' lives, giving authenticity to her prose. Bonus 3. A Long Road from Page to Screen. Anne Rice published Interview with the Vampire in 1976, but it took nearly 2 decades before it reached the big screen. Paramount Pictures first purchased the rights in 1977, yet the project languished in development for years. Directors and actors came and went, with different visions that never quite aligned. It wasn't until the early 1990s that Warner Brothers revived the project, bringing in director Neil Jordan and securing Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt for the lead roles. After years of false starts, delays, and uncertainty, the novel that had redefined vampire fiction finally became a Hollywood production in 1994, one that grossed over $220 million worldwide and left an indelible mark on Gothic cinema. Interview with the Vampire isn't just a Gothic novel or a single film. It's a story that has lived many lives, first as a grieving mother's manuscript, then as a groundbreaking book, and later as a lavish Hollywood production that pushed actors, makeup artists, and crews to their limits. The 1994 adaptation gave the world a vision of vampires that was sensual, tragic, and unforgettable. Tom Cruise stunned audiences as the flamboyant Lestat. Brad Pitt nearly quit from the grueling night shoots. Kirsten Dunst, at just 11 years old, delivered a performance that critics still call one of the greatest child roles in modern cinema. The film earned Academy Award nominations, a BAFTA win, and over $220 million at the global box office. But more than that, it etched Rice's characters into popular culture forever. From the streets of New Orleans to the Gothic halls of London, its imagery still defines what we imagine when we think of vampires today. That cry of anguish still lingers, reminding us that beneath the velvet, the blood, and the shadows, Interview with the Vampire is ultimately about humanity, our grief, our hunger, and our longing for eternity. That is why the book and the film continue to live on, refusing to fade into the dark.